guys, we are on the final stretch of getting this bag finished. Now, if we want to add grommets, remember that's optional. But for this, the very last required step is to add the button. So the button's not on. We're going to add the button, and it shows you all the steps on here. So I'm going to try to walk you through. What they mean so that as you're watching it, I can help you understand what they mean. So the first thing I want to do, step one, is I'm going to mark. So to mark this on here, I'm going to just take and just put my fabric marking pen right through the middle and mark it, and that will mark the underlayer. So that puts a little dot right there, and I want just a dot. You don't want more, you don't want an X or a big marking, just a little dot so you know exactly where you want the button to end up. Okay, then I'm gonna take my thread, and I just cut this thread, but you want your thread to be about the length of your arm over to your shoulder. If it's a little bit longer, that's okay, but too much longer, it will just get tangled, although we are doing double layer thread, and so if it's a tiny bit longer, it's okay because it's going to be shorter than normal once it's on the needle. So I'm just going to thread the needle like this. Okay, so make this now different than the hand sewing that we did before. This time we're going to do a double thread, and we're going to connect the threads down here because we want lots and lots of strength on that button string. So you don't want to just do a single layer thread, or it will take you forever to get the button on strong. This stuff is called beeswax. I have a whole bunch of it in the room over by the presser feet. I'm just going to run my thread through the beeswax. Okay, and that just gives it more of a wire quality. It makes the threads so they kind of stick together and they don't get tangled as easy. It also makes it a little stronger. So, and then I'm gonna knot my thread the same way as you guys learned on the hand stitch. Make the donut, wrap it around the needle like 5 times, and then pull it down. Remember to anchor it right here with your finger, and then cut off the extra. Make sure you don't cut off the knot. Okay, so this is now if it feels like it's still a little tangly, you can run it through the beeswax multiple times to kind of get it, so it kind of makes it stick together a little bit, so it's just not as tangly, it's not as likely to get tangled. Okay, so the last, so I just want you to notice we're getting ready to sew the button on, and I just want you to see that there's different kinds of buttons. The one I'm gonna use is the 4-hole button because that's the hardest to put on, and so I want to make sure that you know how to do that. But if you do a 2-hole button, it's just 1 step less. So we're gonna do the 4-hole button, and that's the one I picked on purpose because I wanted to make sure that there were 4 holes. So the first thing that I'm gonna do, this is the one I'm gonna use, so I'll set that one aside. Right where my dot is, I'm just gonna stick the needle in. Okay, get really close on this. Okay, and I'm going to stick the needle under the dot. So it goes, it's just like making a little tiny stitch right there. Okay, then I'm gonna pull it up. Okay, and the wax there's so much wax on there, it just came off as I was going through there. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna go through 2 holes diagonally on the button. Okay, like this. And I'm gonna hold my finger underneath because I want to create what's called a little shank. So I'm gonna stick my needle. Now this is the trick to making it so it doesn't end up really messy. When I stick my needle in, I'm gonna stick my needle under, like through those 2 holes, through the same 2 holes every time. So when I create a stitch on the back, see how I see that needle right there? It's gonna be going through the same place every single time I go. Okay, so, and then when I pull it, I wanna pull it tight, but I wanna make sure I have a little, so I'm sticking my finger under it to keep it from going all the way to the fabric. And it's actually, what that does is it allows for your button, I'm just gonna show you this. It allows for your button to have a little, when I button the flap, it allows for your button to have a little bit of movement in case it's in the wrong place. or if it's slightly off, and it also allows for the thickness to fit underneath the button. So if it's sewed really tight on, it puts a lot of tension on the button, and the button's more likely to pop off because that tension's always working on the thread to break it. So here we go. Okay, I'm just gonna go under. Okay, and I go through these same 2 holes on the button, and then I go through the same 2 holes on the fabric every time. This time I'm gonna go through the same 2 holes on the fabric, but I'm actually going to twist my button so that I'm going through those 2 holes. The other 2 holes. Okay, now I'm gonna go through the same 2 holes. Same 2 holes on the fabric, but now I'm going through the opposite holes on the top of the button. So if you're doing a 2-hole button, you're done with that step before, like, you just go through the 2 holes a few more times to make it strong. Okay, so I only have to go about 3 times on each set of holes. But on this one, I might go 4 or 5 times on the 2-hole button. Okay. Okay, so now I have my button sewn on. This is called a crazy 8 stitch, and I love this because it is like the prettiest finish I've ever seen on a button. And most sewing teachers do not teach this. They just teach you to wrap it around, but this is so pretty. I just have to teach it to you if you want to learn it. Okay, so that needle's going to come up through the center. Now I want you to notice that this thread is coming out of the button right there. Okay. Now I'm going to take the tip of my needle and I'm going to come up. Notice how there's a big space between here. I'm going to come up through the center, and then I'm going to wrap it around. I call this the crazy 8 stitch. Then I'm going to come up through the middle, and then I'm going to wrap it around the other side. Okay, come up through the middle. Okay, wrap it around the other side. And it just goes, okay. Okay, and I'm just gonna kind of pull that to untwist it. Then it's gonna go around this side and wrap. Okay, and it's gonna keep going. Okay, and so it makes kind of a braid look. If you can, I don't know if you can focus it on that, but you just go down the shank and you get this really cool kind of a braided stitch there. Okay, then when you get to the bottom, you have 2 options. We could just make the knot here. We can knot it off. So I just kind of go like this, make a loop, and then pull my thread through the loop. And you do that twice, and it gets ready to knot. But I'm going to show you, and you can cut it at that point, or you can go through just go back through one of your holes on this side. And so it comes out to the back. Okay, and so I'm looking at the back of this stitch. Now this is the fancy finish. If you want to do the fancy finish, just make sure your buttons look so fancy when they're finished. You just take and put the needle under that one little stitch, and you just stitch around that single stitch a few times. Okay, and then I already knotted it before I pulled it through. So this is just optional. You don't have to do this part, but you can just cut it because it's already been knotted and it's not going to come off. So when you're finished, you're going to see this button that kind of pops off the fabric a little if you've done it right. So you should see a space between the fabric and the button right there. That's called a shank, and that's what it should look like when it's finished. So we're just going to test it to see how it looks when it's done. And look at it like that. And there we go.